have a video to play for you that, in light of recent news, is not something Tucker Carlson wants you to be reminded of. And it's by itself interesting, given how wrong he was in the video you're about to see, again, in light of recent news. But it's also indicative of a broader political issue right now that we'll get to after the clip. Before playing the clip, here is the context. The New York Times reports, Sam Bankman-Fried, the founder of the FTX cryptocurrency exchange, who was convicted of stealing billions of dollars from consumers, was sentenced to 25 years in prison on Thursday, capping an extraordinary saga that upended the crypto industry and became a cautionary tale of greed and hubris. And so Sam Bankman-Fried, huge story, obviously, with FTX collapsing and him now being sentenced to prison for his wrongdoing. Now, before he was charged with these crimes that he's now been convicted and sentenced because of, you have people like Tucker Carlson, who tried to create a story about how the Biden administration and his Department of Justice would never hold SBF accountable because SBF has donated big bucks to Democrats. Well, he was wrong. And it's not just Tucker who made these sorts of predictions, but let me start with him.
What's interesting is, even as they're threatening to arrest Elon Musk or whatever that just was, at the same time, Biden's Justice Department seems not very interested in a man called Sam Bankman-Fried. Why is that? Well, maybe because Bankman-Fried was the Democratic Party's second biggest donor this cycle, just over 30 thereabouts. But he came in right behind George Soros for the amount of money that he gave to Democrats. And he's friends with all of them. We're going to do a much longer piece on this soon because it's fascinating.
Really quickly, going to pause your viewing of this segment to ask you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's so helpful to grow the show. Just make sure that subscribe button is clicked and click the like button as well. Back to the video.
But his crypto company just blew up, destroyed a lot of people's net worth. Now, apparently, as his company was tanking, Bankman-Fried continued to send millions of dollars to the Democratic Party. So the question is that fraud? We don't know. But someone should be asking that question? No. No one seems to be. No warrant has been issued. Why? Well, because he's a political ally. He's not Elon Musk. Where is he? Well, we can't interview him because he's not in the country. Apparently he's in the Bahamas. A source told CoinDesk, quote, that the whole operation, the company that just blew up, was run by a gang of kids in the Bahamas in a luxury penthouse. But don't ask questions.
And then, of course, you had Elon Musk, too, saying SBF was a major Democratic donor, so no investigation. And by itself, it's interesting to go back and say, hey, you confidently said things that would portray Joe Biden and Democrats in a negative light that we've now learned were wildly inaccurate. Are you going to come around and correct and say, hey, credit to them for not trying to interfere just because of political donation? Of course not. There's never a correcting of record. And so by itself as an individual story, I think it's important to point that out. I'll also note, before getting to the broader point I want to make on this, that they're also blurring the lines here, as they do with Trump's legal troubles, between the Department of Justice and Joe Biden himself or Democratic leaders themselves. While, of course, the president does appoint the attorney general, so there's a connection there, and it is a part of the broader administration, the Department of Justice is supposed to operate independently, largely. And so pretending like Joe Biden would make direct decisions about if SBF is prosecuted or investigated is a little bit silly, but they do the same thing with Donald Trump. We see constantly pretending like Joe Biden is deciding if Trump's going to be indicted federally. And then getting to the larger point, these sorts of predictions, sort of pouncing on a moment where the facts could easily change because it would take a second to investigate this sort of business fraud situation. And so before they bring criminal charges, behind the scenes, they're going to be doing a lot of investigating. But Tucker very quickly was able to jump on and say, here are a bunch of points I can make because as of now, we haven't learned about a criminal investigation. And so I want you to perceive Joe Biden and Democrats as corrupt right now in this moment. Then if the facts ever change, I'm not going to come on and correct the record. So you'll still sort of not know why, but you just remember a lot of stories about the corrupt Democrats. But each one individually falls apart very quickly. And that's what we see constantly. And that's what we're seeing playing out here. I do think it also shows sort of how Tucker Carlson thinks, right? He's thinking they got a bunch of money from Sam Bankman-Fried. Of course, they're going to try to interfere in any potential investigation and protect him, because that's what we would do, right? Trump would do that. But that's not what Joe Biden would do, a difference in their character. But then this is a broader issue among these sort of conspiratorial, dishonest pundits, which is you can make a lot of pie in the sky, exciting, riveting predictions and accusations and tell a lot of interesting stories that then your followers are all bought into. But then you have no responsibility to be held accountable if those things don't end up being true. An example of this very phenomenon is what we talked about yesterday, Marjorie Taylor Greene coming out and saying that she's going to reveal the fraud that was engaged in the state of Georgia very soon. And Trump has said, I'm going to do a press conference and reveal all the evidence that the election was stolen, and that's going to cause the federal case and the Fulton County case to be dropped against me. And then the press conference never happens. And you see Mike Lindell, who says Trump's going to be ushered in as the rightful president by this date. The date comes, doesn't happen. The Supreme Court's going to rule that Biden has to leave and Trump's going to come in. The military is going to bring him in and rip Biden out because the election was stolen. And then it doesn't happen. And what is the issue among the followers that allows them to go through that cycle over and over again and never hold accountable the people who are so inaccurate so often, like Tucker Carlson? If you see him time and time again, this particular subject or the many others that we've discussed, or people again like Mike Lindell, Trump, Marjorie Greene, and others who promise this thing's coming and it's going to be huge and explosive, or Alex Jones constantly saying World War III is going to start at this time, or it's already started, and then the things never happen and his followers never hold him accountable for it by not watching him anymore. And that I don't understand. It's a problem. The people enjoy being riveted, enjoy being afraid often, and enjoy the salacious nature of the coverage they get from networks like Fox News and elsewhere, that they never check to see if these salacious predictions ever come true. And here was me confronting at a Trump rally a Trump supporter about this when it comes to Mike Lindell.
Mike Lindell proved beyond a reasonable doubt that enough cheating went on in that election that it would have changed the outcome.
Obviously, many would say he didn't, but to move on from that, speaking of Mike Lindell, he has predicted multiple times that by this date, Trump will take back over as president, the military will bring him in. Does it not make you go, oh wait, maybe the claims he's been making about other things are also lies because he lied about this, or he at least falsely predicted something about this?
I don't believe Mike Lindell's got a bad bone in his body. He is a true Christian. I ministered for years. Why I'm here, why I built this truck, God came to me. And I'll hold my belief where God tells me to hold it. And it's a little too complicated for most people to even figure out what would happen if they overturned or found out that that was a fraud.
Mike Lindell has said in 2 weeks, Trump's going to be made president. And then 2 weeks comes, it doesn't happen. The same people, it's the same people, will hear him months later say 2 weeks again. Well, and they still find him to be credible. And the Trump supporter there just started saying things unrelated to my question. How do you pull people out of that, right? How do you convince someone to not trust an outlet or individual when even that outlet or individual contradicting themselves or promising something that doesn't come true won't change their belief in their credibility? I really don't know. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel.